Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello Rank Squad and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast. The transfer window has slammed shut in most of Europe. Our deadline day deals have been completed. There have been some interesting things that have happened in the transfer market, and we're going to get into all of them today. My name is Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me across the water is the one and only Mr. Dean Jones, fresh off deadline day, the transfer guru himself. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, not bad. It was, to be honest, I quite like predictable deadline days. Mostly, it was predictable. Most of us working in it thought it would be a quiet last few days, and it did pretty much turn out to be that. It was the same old storylines going over and over again, you know. So it wasn't, it wasn't an all timer, I don't think, but
no,
yeah, it threw up a few quirks, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, some of the most interesting stories felt like deals falling through in some cases. Obviously, Jean-Philippe Mateta's move to AC Milan on deadline day fell through because of medical issues. We saw a really sad story, actually, of Dwight McNeil's deal to Crystal Palace falling through. His partner posted on Instagram a really heartfelt thing about how upset he was about it, and you know how difficult a few days it had been for him. So we can discuss that a little bit as well, the kind of human side of it. Ricardo Pepi's deal to Fulham falling through because PSV couldn't find a replacement, which feels weird seeing that PSV are 17 points clear and have just beaten closest rivals Feyenoord without Ricardo Pepi, and he's out till early March. But, you know, it is what it is, and it's their prerogative to decide on how they want to play the rest of the season. I just don't think they'll get that kind of fee for him again. But, you know, the big deal, I suppose, going through on deadline day was the Jorgen Strand Larsen deal to Crystal Palace from a Premier League perspective anyway. And now even that is a little bit confusing because of the fact that the deal to take JP Mateta away from the club fell through. And now there's two strikers there, which is a strange place for Palace to be.
Yeah, I mean, Palace have gone ahead with the deal. And obviously part of that is that, you know, it's very possible that Mateta ends up not playing football for the next few months as a result of the knee problem that he's got. Like, it's all very interesting, and like, you know, obviously all of these stories like are around Crystal Palace, which, you know, Mateta has been angling for a move all month. It was strange when he was being linked to Nottingham Forest, because I was like, I was messaging some of my contacts at the time when the deal was like moving in that sense, and I was like, but he doesn't want to go there, does he? Like, why is Mateta going to go to Nottingham Forest? That doesn't make any sense to his ambitions or his profile or anything. And people very well placed were like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to us either. Like, trying to figure out where else he's going. Like, there's still the potential to go to Italy or Tottenham, but they're not actually coming in right now. Anyway, obviously Milan did come back in, and that was great news for Mateta, who was excited about the prospect of playing for a European giant and raising his status in the game, obviously ahead of the World Cup as well. I felt that would be good for him. But all along, he's had a knee problem. And I guess, like, the sign, like, Glasner's talked about this. He has said, you know, he's got a problem with his knee. I don't think any of us thought it was this bad, but
to be fair, if Nicholas Füllkrug can pass an AC Milan medical, maybe he thought he's, you know, had a fair shot at getting through there as well.
That's a good point. But yeah, Palace say they were upfront about the problem. Milan assessed him, then felt the need to reassess him, and then felt it was too risky. And that's a tough one to take for Mateta, as it now has a knock-on effect, a really adverse knock-on effect, I guess, for his plans for the season and the summer. Because in the meantime, Palace have signed a striker that's better than him. And his World Cup place is now potentially on the line. as he's got a decision to make, does he use this moment to get his knee fixed? Probably. If it's a problem that's been flagged up on a medical, like ultimately Mateta doesn't really want to play for Palace anymore. He hasn't signed a new contract and he's looking for the next step up. And now that this has been so high profile, his next medical, wherever that's going to be, is going to be very high scrutiny. So this knee problem can't exist in the summer. So it kind of puts his World Cup place on the line. And that's going to be really hard for him to take. You know, he scored 2 goals in 3 games for France. He's made a pretty good impact on that scene. And his contract at Palace does still run until 2027. But, you know, Palace, if they know that he's not wanting to stay, they'll want to sell him anyway. It's a complicated one. And I feel a bit sorry for him. I don't know how Palace fans will feel in general, knowing that he was angling for this the whole time. But I guess it helps understand why perhaps his form hasn't been that good, knowing that he's had a knee problem. Nonetheless, Strand Larsen's going in. He's not worth £48 million in my book right now. But I do think that overall, you're actually getting a better forward than Mateta. I like Strand Larsen as a striker. I know people
so do I.
He's not worth this because he hasn't scored any goals this season. It's like, yeah, but he is playing for the worst team in the league by a distance. And when he's been good, he has been very good. And Newcastle wanted him, and other clubs would definitely take him. So I do think that when you look at what you're getting out of someone over the next 4 years, I actually think Strand Larsen's a better player than Mateta.
Yeah, I mean, I hasten to agree. I think that obviously there is a level of that Mateta has scored at a very, very impressive rate up to this season. And I think it's only Erling Haaland that has scored more goals than him over the Premier League in the last 3 seasons combined, which is a fair place to be, right? But I do think that Strand Larsen is younger, has a lot of the same qualities that Mateta has, and last year scored 14 non-penalty goals in the Premier League when he had a team around him who were able to kind of focus the supply line. And this year, yes, Strand Larsen has been a bit out of favour. Yes, I think his head was turned in the summer. And look, there's always question marks over attitude and application when that happens. And that's never a great indication of where a player is at. Fine. But the flip side of that is when you look at the weapons that Palace have to supply, ammunition to Jorgen Strand Larsen. You're looking at Munoz flying down one flank. You're looking at someone like a Jeremy Pino, who's been, very creative. They've created a lot of chances for Mateta this season, and he's missed a lot of chances. If you put those opportunities in front of Strand Larsen, is he going to be more able to finish them off than what Mateta has been in this cold snap, shall we say? I think the answer is yes, but obviously we will see. And you can understand some of the, maybe not frustration, but some of the criticism of this deal, given that Strand Larsen would probably have been available for 20, 30 million in the summer. And that's probably more akin to where his value is now. So for Wolves, they've done really well in maximising the value from this transfer. And for Palace, well, they had the option. They thought that Mateta was going. So effectively, they're probably giving him the same deal that Mateta would either have been on if he was going to sign a new contract. So effectively what they're doing is just paying the difference. And that maybe is the overpay, but you're banking that for bringing in a younger player with potentially more sell-on value than Mateta has at this point if you signed him to a new contract.
And obviously there's the Dwight McNeil factor, which does have some influence here. He was looking to join Palace for 12 million up front, 8 million in add-ons, which kind of makes up, if you think about the fact that they pulled the plug on that deal, or didn't respond to that deal in the end, they're kind of making up that by suddenly realising they're left with Mateta at the club and they've gone and spent the extra on Strand Larsen. It feels to me a bit like they're like, well, we just don't spend this money on Dwight McNeil and we're kind of back where we were, but we've just got Mateta in the squad rather than Dwight McNeil. And it's a business decision, and I think, I imagine the majority of people in the world have been in a position where they've lost a job or lost a contract because we're expendable to the biggest companies. And at the end of the day, they are watching their cash flow and watching their business plans rather than worrying about our own personal feelings and our own livelihoods. And that's one of the big problems with making a transfer deadline day move. It's the worst time to make a transfer. Unless it's been like prepared for the last however long leading into that day, you're in a very precarious moment because your decisions are made under pressure. And a lot of the time, they're not even decisions. You're just riding a wave. You're living in a moment, and then you're dealing with the consequences of whatever happened. Whether it's that the deal goes through and you end up there, and maybe it still doesn't work out, or the team does pull the plug on you and you're left kind of shattered by it. Like, it's dramatic on deadline day, and it's played up like it's a Netflix show or whatever. But it is people's lives, and it is messy. And this happens a lot. You just don't really hear people publicly airing how they feel about it. It's like they go along with it. They haven't really given it such much consideration. Suddenly they're in a car heading there, or they're in a plane heading somewhere, thinking, right, whoa, like my whole life's just been turned upside down. Usually the deal still goes through. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get a case of the old Peter Odemwingies and you're left stranded. And that is where Dwight McNeil now finds himself. I think Everton have the sort of support base that might support him, that they might feel some empathy for him in this situation. And I think if Dwight McNeil like holds his hand, it's not like he's been like, it's not he's walking out on the club. He
No,
hasn't
he's
really
not
had a
forced
chance.
an exit. Yeah.
No. So I think that there'll be some sympathy for him. And I think that if he kind of stands there with his hands up and he's like, hope you can take me back in, like I'll genuinely give my all, because now he's going to have so much motivation. The next time he gets on a football pitch, Dwight McNeil's a really good player. And I thought he was actually going to have a big role to play at Everton this season. So I'm kind of surprised he didn't. But he's a really good player. I'm kind of glad that he's aired this side to the game. Loads of players feel this. And it's just one of the few times we actually hear about how footballers' lives can be a little bit like our own, but even more severe because, you know, it's not like somebody suddenly signs you for a different podcast and moves you to the other side of the country to record it. And then you get there and they say, actually, nah, don't worry about it. You're like, oh, but me and Lucy are right here. We're just going to move into this flat in Liverpool. No, don't worry about it. Go back to your silly ranks one, mate. Off you go. It's weird. It's just a weird life they live.
Yeah, no, it's strange. And look, I thought the post was genuinely very heartfelt and does kind of show a different side to what happens, because we get wrapped up in transfer deadline day, right? And the fact that there are deals and the fact that players are trying to move, but it is whole lives upended and sometimes just dropped pretty unceremoniously, which is the case here. And I was talking to Don Fifield from The Athletic earlier, and he was just like, it's just a really bad look for Palace that they just literally left the phone off the hook. And look, you know, stuff happens
really
and
poor, that is.
Decisions are made, and that's fine. Like, you don't have to go through with everything. Sometimes decisions are made for the best for, you know, the club and the ownership, and that's fine. Like, that's how football works. But just leaving it expire after putting a deal sheet in and not, you know, doing the paperwork in time is wild behaviour. And I don't think anyone in Palace here has covered themselves in glory. Is probably all I'll say on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, should we take a little break there? When we come back, we're going to do some rankings. We're going to look at some of the best transfers of the window and some of the weirdest transfers of the window as well, before we finish up with a couple that might have slipped under your radar. Make sure you stick with us here on Ranks FC.
Welcome back to Ranks FC. I know, I'm the transfer guru. I'm the one that usually runs you through the stuff that's going to be happening, is happening. But Jack's actually quite good at being the one that tells you what's happened. So, Jack, this is down to you. You've been analysing deadline day. You did some amazing threads on our Patreon, gave some great insight to deals that were being unlocked. So thank you for doing that. Well, I was busy on other stuff on deadline day. Remember, if you haven't joined the Patreon, please do so. Please come over and have a look. You can get your first month for free as well. It's also worth the $5, I'd like to believe. You get loads of content over there, and you get us a little bit looser. You get a looser version of me and Jack, and you get to join in the conversations and get your voice heard. So link in the description please do come and join the Patreon. But Jack, I want to turn this over to you to tell us, about the other aspects of the deadline day. We're going to look at the best deals, the weirdest deals, and the deals that people have missed.
Yeah, let's start with the really good, shall we? And look, this is a little bit off the beaten track. We've talked a lot about the big deals over the course of it, the big changes that have come at some of the biggest clubs in the world. And there's a few deals in here that are pretty headline, and there's a few in here as well, I think, that have slipped under the radar and probably need a little bit of attention. So this is going to be pretty quick fire, relatively high level, but just some transfers that I really, really like over the course of this. So a few honourable mentions to start with. I really like Tati Castellanos to West Ham, right? And I don't think that Tati Castellanos is going to be one of those players who scores 20 goals in a season, right? Like I
This
don't
is a hot take, mate. I haven't heard anyone say they like Tati Castellanos to West Ham.
I think that West Ham fans will like Tati Castellanos. I think he's the kind of player that puts himself about. He's a bit scrappy. He gets on the end of things. He's not the cleanest footballer. He will miss chances. And obviously that's frustrating for fan bases when you pay a fair bit of money for a striker. But I think his hustle and the fact that he gets around at the top of the pitch, he holds the ball up, he's an absolute nuisance for defenders. And the fact that this is a West Ham team who need fighters, right? Who are in this point, we've spent a lot of time over the first half of the season talking, especially on the Patreon, but in general, about a West Ham team that just really were lacking any ability to scrap it out, to fight it, to make sure that this is a team that are showing everything for staying up. I really do think he's that kind of player. And whilst, as I say, not the cleanest striker of a ball, he's someone that will get in amongst it and someone who I think is going to be seen as maybe not an unqualified success, but as a success at West Ham United. So I like that deal. I also really like Alex Freeman's move from Orlando City to Villarreal for £2.9 million, which feels like a real bargain. Like someone who's forced his way into Mauricio Pochettino's plans for the US men's national team, has exploded at Orlando as part of a defense that has allowed him to tilt and get up the field, to use all those athletic qualities that we know that he has. And Villarreal have a massive spot here. They have this gap at right back. They've played Pau Navarro there a little bit this season. They've played Santi Mourinho there a little bit this season. They've played Juan Foyth there a bit, all of whom are sort of centre-back, right-back hybrids at the very, very most. And to have a fullback here who is going to get forward, who is going to explore that right-hand side, who has the athletic quality to dominate a flank, I think is really something that Villarreal have needed for a couple of years now. And I'm excited to see how he gets on in that transition year from MLS coming into La Liga. So at that price point, I think that's very smart, as I think is Luca Netz from Borussia Mönchengladbach to Nottingham Forest for £2 million, 22-year-old, out of contract at the end of the season. Forest have skipped the queue by paying a nominal fee for him to Gladbach, and someone who fits the kind of Nico Williams mold, gets forward a lot. Yeah, a little bit of questionable defensive actions one-on-one, but someone who can make things happen, who likes to get up the flank, who likes to cross the ball. I think that that's a smart bit of business for Forest. We'll see how much he plays before I go way too in it. And the last honourable mention before we get into them is this weird triple deal that's taken Giovanni from Hellas Verona to Napoli, has taken Kieran Bowie from Hibernian to Hellas Verona to replace Giovanni, and then has taken Dane Scarlett from Tottenham on loan to Hibernian to replace Kieran Bowie. I just like deals where there is obviously a place for someone in the team. You know, where they've just like obviously fulfilled a need. And Giovanni has done really well for a poor Hellas Verona side. He moves to a Napoli side desperately in need of attacking reinforcements. Kieran Bowie has been pretty good, has really kind of show his physical ability in the SPL, and now moves over to Hellas Verona, a well-trodden pathway for Scots moving into Italian football, which will allow him some, compatriots, shall we say, to be able to knock around with and to help settle him down. And then Dane Scarlett, who's just not been given opportunities enough at Tottenham Hotspur to show what he's capable of in a move where he will get minutes at Hibs. So I like that chain of transfers that just opens up things for everyone to get their minutes. But let's go into a quick top five. At 5, I've got Ademola Lookman to Atletico Madrid at £30 million, which feels like a real steal. Now, that price point. Now, Atalanta might think we should have sold him earlier. There have been ups and downs. We should have maybe sold him when his stock was higher. But equally, I could see why they tried to hold on to him to push into that, top four, those teams challenging for the Champions League on a regular basis. They wanted to keep him around and make sure that he was part of the fabric of the club. And obviously gave Atalanta fans the greatest moment of their lives with that win in the Europa League, the hat-trick in the Europa League final. Someone who's consistently been able to provide a little bit of magic, but I think that whose work rate and ability to just create something out of nothing should really suit this Atleti side. Now, Antoine Griezmann is clearly on the way out, on the decline, and it breaks my heart to say that. It's not been a brilliant year for Julian Alvarez. Sorlot's just got injured, and he was the only one scoring regularly. Baena has been okay, but hasn't kind of set the world on fire. Nico Gonzalez hasn't hugely settled. I'm not sure Thiago Almada is going to be there for too long. There are openings here at Atleti, and it feels like a really smart bit of business to me to bring in Ademola Lookman at this point, to maybe in a year's time be looking at giving him the keys to the castle in terms of the output of this Atleti side. And I think £30 million feels like good business for Atleti, but also a decent recoup from Atalanta, given the fact that his stock had fallen from the height it was at maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Obviously, we knew Lookman was going to move in this window, and there was a chance he came to England. He was touted around a bit, Spurs and clubs like that linked. But ultimately, he's moved to Atleti, and I just wonder if it does unlock Julian Alvarez to leave as well. Like, I feel there's rumours that Arsenal were looking at Alvarez, and I'm told it's true. I'm told they genuinely are interested in that and have made initial explorations around it. So when I saw this deal, my check straight away was, hang on, is Alvarez going on deadline day to Arsenal? Are they going to do something ridiculous? Are we actually going to get a twist? And obviously that hasn't happened. And I was told straight away, no, nothing in this window of that significance. But for the end of the season, let's see. So that could be interesting.
Yeah. I when they free up something else as well, something to always keep an eye on. But I think that's a good move for Atletico Madrid, and it's a decent fee for Atalanta as well, who obviously have to kind of move into a new era now under Palladino. All right, and number 4, I'm going to go Kenneth Taylor, once renamed on this podcast Zenith Taylor by Rank God Sam Tighe, to try and make him a bit cooler. Left Ajax, where he's been for some time, goes to Lazio for £13 million. I think it's excellent business from Lazio. Like, they lose Guendouzi early in the window. Sarri's absolutely raging about it, but the club is really struggling from a financial perspective. And they bring in Kenneth Taylor. Now, this wouldn't be the last time I said this on the podcast, but everyone and their dog apparently was looking for a central midfielder in this window. We saw Forest absolutely trying to work it out on the final day. We saw Fulham looking in these kind of markets. £13 million is something that both Forest and Fulham and a host of other Premier League clubs who are all looking for central midfielder holes could have afforded, right? And the fact that he goes there, and it's a relatively early deal in the window, and I think that's what maybe tips it over the edge here in terms of why this ended up happening. But a ready-made spot in that midfield for him in Guendouzi leaving. A really, interesting technical player who has good physical aspects as well, should thrive in the hustle and bustle in the middle in Serie A. I think that Lazio have looked at the market there and really identified something quite smart on a quick batter. So I think that you've got to give credit to Ajax for doing that at this deal and at this price. At 3, I've gone with Daryl Bacola. And you might know more about this than I do, but ahead of this window, it felt like Daryl Bacola was being touted around as this kind of wonder kid prospect who everyone was interested in. And look, 18 years old, was through the Marseille Academy and had started to get these first team minutes, someone that was capable of playing in midfield or moving forward into that forward line and playing in a variety of different roles, who was a really, really impressive player at youth level. And who had been talked about with potentially moving to Tottenham, to Manchester United, to Arsenal, to Chelsea. There were big names on the table. He's ended up going on deadline day to Sassuolo for £8 million. And for Sass, who picked up a treble deal, by the way, from Marseille on the final day, was a bit bizarre. this feels like an absolute superstar signing. Someone who is going to get those opportunities straight away. Bacola had kind of reneged on signing a new contract because he wasn't getting as many opportunities as he would have liked. And that's a problem between him and Marseille, and it's opened up the door for someone to come in. But the fact that the only people that came in there after someone was so highly recommended and so talked about before the window, to allow him to go to Sassuolo and grow within that system and potentially be sold. This is a player who might make a 5 times profit in 2 years. He's a really, really interesting footballer. And I just feel like this is a great move for him because he's going to get the first team minutes that he so clearly desires. It's a great move for SAS because they might well make a real big profit on this. And Marseille are just sort of sitting there and have weirdly frozen out a wonder kid potentially who has that potential to be a £40 million player in a couple of years. So great for everyone, basically, apart from Marseille.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me a little bit skeptical about whether those teams are all genuinely in there if he's ended up at Sassuolo. Like, maybe it was good agent work throughout the window. Maybe he's trying to raise the bar of what was truly possible. But, you know, Marseille, what am I talking about? Marseille have had a pretty big squad overhaul, haven't they? And they've been changing it up a lot. So he's not the only player here that's kind of going out the door. They've made some big decisions, and it feels like there might just be a plan that he's not part of. Maybe this is one that they regret. I looked through some of the list of the other players that have left Marseille, and I'm like, yeah, it's all mostly okay. Maybe there'll be some regret here, but he hasn't played that many games.
No, but he did start the game against Newcastle in the Champions League, and I thought he was very, very composed, well put together. You know, someone who just looked comfortable on the ball straight away. And from an 18-year-old, that's pretty remarkable when you're thrown into that kind of environment. I just feel like if you've got someone you're willing to throw into a Champions League game at 18 years old, the chances are you should probably be keeping hold of them. And SAS have been the beneficiaries of the fact that he's clearly gone, look, you're not playing me enough. I want to go and play first team football. I need to raise my own profile, but also I need to play to get to where I want to be in the game. I have huge respect for him doing that.
Yeah.
But I think it just might end up with, I think what's potentially happened, and the reason why no one else has snuck in here is that it feels like that happened late in the window. Originally, I think Marseille were like, no, we're going to get him to sign a new contract. We're kind of deflecting all offers. And he gets to the end of the window and they're like, oh, not signing a contract, could walk away. We'll take what we can get. And Sassuolo are the ones that were on the ball and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a few deals recently between Marseille and SAS.
Yeah, there's something going on there.
So maybe there's just something going
there as well.
Yeah, so I don't think we should also totally look at this without considering something else might be going on, and there might be like a pathway or an agency combination here that's working to help those clubs combine.
Yeah, 100%. All right, top 2 for you that I've got. The second one is another MLS exit. Obed Vargas moving from Seattle Sounders to Atletico Madrid for £2.6 million, 20 years old, already looking like a bit of a superstar. And his fit for an Atleti and a Cholo Simeone system, someone who covers ground like it's going out of fashion. He's able to, get in, nip in, win balls. He's quite imposing despite a relatively small physique. And he's been doing this already for, a relatively long time, considering his age. Someone who's been touted for a move to Europe for a little while now. People have been keeping an eye on him in various capacities. To get this done for £2.6 million is an absolute steal. And I am stunned, one, with the price point that we're talking about, but two, with the fact that Atleti have been allowed to come in here and pick him up for that kind of money, especially when you think about what they end up getting for a Conor Gallagher. You've effectively brought in a younger version of Conor Gallagher here, who's able to do a similar job, who the fans will take to, I'm sure, in the same kind of way. And you've brought him in for sort of £2.6 million. They've just managed to find and replace and done it at an absolute cut price point. I'm really impressed with this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a under the radar deal that definitely won't be talked about in most transfer shows that look back on the transfer window. But that's the great thing about the way you view deadline days and how you view transfer windows, because you're looking for actual value and actual players that can break the ceilings of what might on face value be capable, what they might be capable of. So yeah, that's it's an interesting deal for sure, and it's a big jump to make from that league to that league.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be interesting, and it's a gamble, obviously, to jump from MLS to La Liga. But I think at the fees we're talking about, both on this deal and then the Alex Freeman one, right? Like at that price point, you can take a gamble. And we talk about differences in financials all the time, and the fact that, you know, the clubs in Serie A or La Liga that aren't necessarily Barcelona, Real Madrid, can't necessarily just jump out there and spend a load of money on a player and it not work out. Like they can't afford to do that in so many cases. Maybe at Betis slightly differently. But here, for this kind of fee, if this doesn't work out, 2.6 million will be, you know, washed away in a year in terms of the grander scheme of where the finances are. If it works out, it looks like one of the steals of the window. So I think it's very, very good value. Not quite as good value, though, as what I have at number one. And now, this is a player I talked about a lot before Christmas, that he was out of contract in the summer. Could someone bring him in as a Christmas present for a load of players? Quinton Timber, right, who left Feyenoord and he went to Marseille. So we've talked about some of the exits at Marseille. £3.9 million for, in my mind, one of the most complete central midfielders that have been out there in the game in the last sort of 18 months. I think Quinton Timber is excellent. He can do a little bit of everything in the midfield. We know that football brain is really switched on, already a full Dutch international, and someone who has been a real driving force and a real leader for this Feyenoord side. The fact that Marseille have got him out of there for £3.9 million offset some of the question marks I have about some of the outgoings that Marseille have allowed to happen, because this, I think, is the best deal of the window. And also, there is no world for me where this doesn't work out. Like, even if Marseille decide to sell Quinton Timber in a year's time, they get more money than they've bought him for to sell him on. And that is the mark of something that almost certainly cannot go wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this is a player that's been linked with some big moves, I think, over the past 18 months or so. When I've been having transfer conversations, he's a player that's always been touted to potentially land in the Premier League. Fulham, probably going back 2, maybe even 3 years since they were linked. But I can remember Fulham being linked to him. Liverpool, I remember there was one stage, it was probably when Slot arrived or something like that, but I remember he was linked with Liverpool at one stage. So to see him move for that amount of money is, kind of mind-blowing when you consider what we expect, particularly in January deals, because you usually do pay a bit of a premium. Maybe that's just when players like this land in the Prem, because there is no way you'd have seen Quinton Timber go into a Premier League team for £3.9 million, is there? Like, as soon as a Prem team would have looked to activate talks, 3.9 would have probably become 13.9. That's just how it works.
But even that would have been unbelievable value, right? Like, and yes, he's out of contract in the summer, and you can understand that maybe the reticence to pay a fee.
But still,
you know, we saw it a little bit with that Luca Netz deal at Forest, right? They've paid £2 million to jump in front of the queue. And this happened a couple of times in a variety of situations. But the fact that this was on the table for £3.9 million and nobody else got involved in it is wild to me. Like, it makes absolutely no sense, but what a steal for Marseille. And I think that there's not zero chance of that failing in terms of him fitting. We know what Marseille is like, and certain players just don't work within the club. But even if it doesn't work, they sell him at a profit. I'm sure of it. So, yeah, it's just one of those strange ones where I just can't see that not working out for everyone in some capacity at any given level. And that, for me, makes it the deal of the window. Right. Should we come on to some of the weirdest deals?
Yeah,
because there's a few stories here. So I've got a top 3 here rather than a top 5, but I've got a couple of honourable mentions here too. Juventus, after doing a right-back swap in the summer with Porto, where João Mario came to Juventus and Alberto Costa went to Porto, have now done another right-back swap deal on loan this time with Bologna. So João Mario, who came in the summer, has really struggled to impinge himself on this Juventus team, goes out one way, and Emil Holm goes in the other. The reason this isn't higher is because I actually think it works out quite nicely. But the problem with it is that, like, why are Juve just doing all these weird right back swap deals? It's like a really chaotic way to do business, and it really does make me laugh. So who knows how this one pans out? The first one worked really well for Porto and didn't work for Juventus. We'll see how this one works out with Bologna, and who wins in that one. But just, it was funny to me that Juve have done another right back swap deal.
Yeah.
There's a few more. Andy Irving joining Sparta Prague. This man has had the most chaotic career of all time.
One.
Is really bizarre. He's bounced around. Look, I don't think Andy Irving was good enough to play for West Ham United. I don't think at any point really anyone thought that. But apart from Nuno, apparently, because he trained well in 1 week, and the most important week of their season, he played twice and they lost twice. But you know, you look at his career where he'd gone from Hearts, then to Berwick Rangers, to Falkirk. He went to Türkgücü München in Germany, then Austria Klagenfurt, then West Ham, back to Austria Klagenfurt on loan, and now he plays for Sparta Prague. One Scotland cap. This man has the maddest career of all time. I just found it incredibly bizarre. I was like, yeah, I'll go back to Central Europe. That was a great place for me. I had a good time. Okay. Good luck to him for what it's worth. But
yeah, probably a good agent again. Yeah, good agent. He manages to get him some cool deals.
Well, he's got an agent who at least is examining the landscape. He's not just looking for the basics. And I've got to respect that. Carl Larin joined Southampton, which I find bizarre in so many ways, on loan after failing at Feyenoord in the first half of the season. So he joins Southampton from Mallorca, which is odd in so many ways. But again, good luck to him. And just the last one, Facundo Buonanotte joining Leeds. Now, not this in particular, because that is a perfectly reasonable transfer. But this whole season for Facundo Buonanotte, he has just spent 6 months rotting on the bench at Chelsea for absolutely no reason whatsoever, only to join Leeds in January. And it just baffles me how he thought this was in any way, shape or form a good idea when it was offered to him in the summer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I mean, it's obviously the bright lights of Stamford Bridge lured him. But
lights he barely saw, for what it's worth.
Well, yeah. Well, he did see him from the stands because they were probably in his eyes where he was sat in the stand. But a really good player who at this stage of his career should just be playing. And that it was always utterly weird that he went to Chelsea. And I'm glad he's got out and he's doing something different.
Yeah, I'm glad that he's at Leeds, and I hope that he does get the minutes that he needs to continue to develop. It's just a bizarre season on the whole. I'm glad he is out of the pit of never ever playing. So fair play to Facundo Buonanotte. Right, top 3 weirdest deals. The third one comes from Spain. So Celta Vigo decided to replace club legend Fran Beltran, who has like over 250 appearances for the club and is 27 years old. They sold him to Girona and replaced him with Matias Vecino, who is 34, on loan. And this makes no sense to me whatsoever. Celta are in a relatively good spot. They've been mostly impressive for the year, maybe not quite as good as they were at the end of last year, but have had a decent season, very comfortable in the middle of the pack. And I look at it and just be like, why have you done that? Now, maybe Beltran has decided that he needs to get out and start more games, and he will do that for Girona because he's a really good player. But I just don't really see how this helps Celta Vigo at all. And they've just decided to swap a player who is very capable, who's 27 years old, who is someone who's grown up with the club in his heart, with, you know, someone that's come in as a Uruguayan on loan from Italy, and who I like Vecino and I think he's a good player, but I have no idea why on earth Celta have done this, apart from maybe to just make peace with Beltran, who just, unless he's forced his way out or been like, lads, I really want to go. Just don't understand why you would do this whilst you're in a European push.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange situation there, as you say. Not somebody that I'm familiar with his craft. I haven't seen him play that many times, but I'll take your lead on that one, mate, for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, quickly through the top 2. At 2, I've put this Lorenzo Luca deal. So Napoli paid £30 million to buy him from Udinese and loan him out to Nottingham Forest, where he'll be the third choice striker at best. Why? Like, why has anyone done this? Like, why have Napoli activated the clause? Surely they don't think that that Nottingham Forest are going to pay more than £30 million for someone when they've just had Callum Wendo in and shipped him out on loan to Eintracht Frankfurt, who is a better player than Lorenzo Luca. Like, I just don't understand this in any stretch way. Like, I can understand Forest being like, yeah, we'll take a punt on someone who's 6'7" and we might be able to lump him in for the last 5 minutes. But I don't understand why Napoli have activated that purchase clause in order to loan him out on the idea that he's suddenly going to be worth more than 30 million quid. Like, that feels absolutely and utterly bizarre to me. If you were going to do that, surely he goes somewhere where he's the first choice number 9 rather than a bit part player off the bench.
Yeah, well, he didn't, by all accounts, make a great early impact on his last deal. So he needs to change that this time around. He needs to make an early impact, build his confidence quickly. Maybe Dyche's direct style of football does suit him. Don't think his last coach particularly suited him. But, Dyche isn't always the sort of manager that puts his arm around you and gives you a cuddle. He actually sometimes does do that. He can be surprising, but he also isn't going to put up with you if you're not delivering. So he's got to have a very strong mentality coming into this. He can't just count on the fact that he's tall. He's got to really make an impact here. The Premier League it's ruthless, and it can be a thankless task up there at times because your stats really do matter. I would be very surprised if this turns out to be a successful deal, but for the players' sake, I hope he can do it.
Fingers crossed. He's not had a great time at Napoli. He is a pretty one-dimensional footballer, which was why it was weird when he went to Napoli in the first place. But it is what it is. All right, number 1. Let's go for this Chelsea centre-back swap deal madness. So Chelsea recall Aaron Anselmino from Borussia Dortmund. They upset Borussia Dortmund in doing so. They upset Aaron Anselmino, who was having a lovely time at Dortmund by all accounts, and who was playing really, really well. They bring him back to the club. And then on deadline day, they decide, sure about that. They then recall Mamadou Sarr from his loan spell at Strasbourg, and they send Aaron Anselmino to Strasbourg in his place. So not only has he been recalled from somewhere that he was really, really happy, he has now gone off to Strasbourg to have to settle into a new team again. Now, if you need to bring a centre-back back into the club, then fair enough. Like, I totally understand that. If Chelsea need an extra centre-back in there to provide bodies, and both of these have been really good in their individual seasons where they've been. Fine. But why would you recall both of them and then send the other one to the place that the original one was? So either you recall Anselmino and you leave Sarr where he is, playing really well in a Strasbourg team where he doesn't have to learn a new system, etc., etc. And Sarr comes into the club, and Anselmino comes into the club and is that 5th choice centre-back, even though he probably does need more minutes. Or you recall Mamadou Sarr and you leave Anselmino to get those minutes at Borussia Dortmund, where he was playing pretty much every week and playing really, really well. The idea of recalling both of them and sending Anselmino to the place where Sarr was makes absolutely no sense on any planet whatsoever. And it doesn't really matter if Mamadou Sarr comes in and does really, really well here. It doesn't change the fact that this is just bizarre behavior in pretty much every single way. And it does give credence to that rumor that Chelsea were worried about Borussia Dortmund getting in his ear and trying to sign him. You're like, well, yeah, like they can try and sign him all they like, but ultimately you called the cards there. If they want to sign him and you say no, he comes back to the club. That's what happens. Like, that's how loan deals work. And so this whole thing just stinks as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, I think Chelsea just didn't like the fact that Dortmund were, in their eyes, unsettling him. They was there to play on loan. He wasn't there to join them permanently. They feel that had been made clear. And while relations have probably been damaged now with Dortmund, I'm not sure that Chelsea especially care. They got Anselmino back, but it wasn't because they saw a place for him in their team. So they've pushed him out to Strasbourg and they've brought in Mamadou Sarr, which, seems, again, kind of pointless. But Sarr had been playing for Liam Rosenior at Strasbourg. So he's made 18 appearances and had been the captain, I think, under Liam Rosenior at Strasbourg. So when you consider that, like if Chelsea need another body, obviously Chelsea had also looked into Jeremy Jacquet, would have been a deal for the end of the season. But I think that the Jacquet thing perhaps partly fell through because the players probably like, that club is nuts. Like, how on earth do I know if I'm even going to get a game there? I think I'm going to go and learn off Konate and Van Dijk instead because they're my heroes. So he's gone off to Liverpool instead. And I think that this didn't help. But Sarr and Rosenior, they know each other a bit better. It's a bit less risky than throwing Anselmino into the Chelsea team. So I imagine that that's basically why.
Yeah, I just feel like you've unsettled loads of players for no real reason.
Well, that's going to happen. That's what happens when you have 700 players in your squad, and Chelsea have got to deal with the implications of that. Like, it's always going to be hard for players to feel any sense of loyalty from you or to you, and that's just going to be part of their problem for the next 10 years, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure there will be players in the mix that do get those opportunities and therefore do have it. I'm just not 100% sure that Aaron Anselmino at this point is ever going to be one of them. So, yeah, fingers crossed he succeeds at Strasbourg under Gary O'Neill and we see, a good movement. It just struck me as a really, really bizarre bit of business all around. So there we have it. That's the top of my weirdest deals. Right, we're going to take a little break there. When we come back on the other side, going to do a quick run through a couple of deals that you might just have missed. Stick with us here on Ranks FC.
Welcome back to Ranks. Jack is doing a great job for us today. We're going to round things off today by talking about some deals that we may have missed. There are some strange, not bad deals, just weird ones that have happened out there. And I remember on going into deadline day, like just looking back at the list myself and thinking, what's actually gone on here that's kind of missed my own radar? And there was like Jack Harrison going to Fiorentina. Yeah. You've seen, I love Pascal Gross went to Brighton, and it was like, okay, I do remember that, but I had kind of forgotten that. Louis Guilherme went from West Ham to Sporting for almost £20 million. That was pretty significant. Didn't Manor Solomon end up at Fiorentina as well? Forgotten.
Yeah, they were just stacking ex-Premier League wingers at Fiorentina. So Fiorentina had two strategies in this window. One was solid, good Serie A players to help get us out of a scrap. And the other one was any wingers who have ever been good, because there are no wingers in the squad that Daniele Prati built. And that's because they used to play wing backs. And as soon as they brought in a manager who wanted to play four at the back, they were like, oh, don't actually have anyone that can play out there. So they went straight in and bought Solomon and Harrison, or loaned Solomon and Harrison. And now they have wide players. So who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of like what I had been looking at going into deadline day itself. But mate, very interested to see which ones caught your eye that you think people might have missed.
Neil Maupay's turned up at Sevilla. Now, people might have seen this because there was a big,
because of the viral
social
tweets,
media
really.
viral stuff. Yeah. But like the idea that he's suddenly at Sevilla, having just sort of bounced around doing very little for quite some time, is bizarre in so many ways. So let's see what impact Neil Maupay has at Sevilla. But who knows what Neil Maupay is or does at this point. Guido Rodriguez left West Ham on a free 18 months after being signed for considerable money from Real Betis, and joined Valencia, who are in the middle of a relegation battle. Like, what? Who? Why?
Yeah.
Where did that come from in so many ways? And also, how did West Ham let him leave on a free is bizarre to me. I'm sure that there would have been plenty of La Liga clubs that would have paid even a nominal fee to get something in the coffers for Guido Rodriguez. So that for me was...
Yeah. Gremio were trying to sign him as well.
Yeah, very, very strange. And just basically being allowed to walk away is very odd. This is a fun one, though. Timo Werner joined the San Jose Earthquakes. And so we'll be playing in a town near you, Dean Jones.
He will be,
for the foreseeable future.
I will see Timo Werner play with my eyes in San Diego this season, indeed. Yeah, that'll be fun.
I love this for him, by the way.
I think he'll be a good fit, mate. I think it's kind of what he needs, go and... go and be a big fish in a small pond. There had been rumoured that the Earthquakes would make a big move, and there was some talk it might be Chucky Lozano, but I think they might have to just leave it there. I don't know if you could combine. Maybe they should combine Chucky Lozano with Timo Werner. What a strike force that would be.
Well, we will see. We'll see. Maybe there's more to come, but for the time being, it's just Timo, and he's got the light back in his eyes, hopefully, to see it. Couple more. Ciro Immobile left Bologna on a free and joined Paris FC. What?
Wow. I mean, there was quite a few players linked with Paris FC across this month. It was a good PR month for them. They've obviously been doing well anyway. They're having a good rise, a good season. But Ciro Immobile rocking up there. This is...
I mean, he's been very, very, very limited in terms of the impact he's had for Bologna. But still, that's a big
good
name.
Shirt seller.
Yeah. And let's see if he really is immobile these days or not when he plays in Liga. Right, talking of Liga, Brighton recalled Matt O'Reilly from Marseille, and the Marseille fans were absolutely delighted about it. So I think that probably tells you about
exodus I was talking about.
That tells you how Matt O'Reilly got on in Marseille. But he was brought back to Brighton, and at the same breath, Brian Gruder was let leave to go out on loan to Leipzig. Dry loan, no option to buy. No, I like this for Leipzig. Like, I think that this is a good move. But this is a Leipzig side chasing Champions League qualification and a Brighton side who are currently struggling to score goals. And the fact that Leipzig want a player that you have to score goals for them in a race for the Champions League suggests to me that maybe you're not utilizing Brian Gruder correctly, especially considering like the end of last season, the start of this season, he had a bit of a breakout. The fact that he's fallen out of favour so quickly is a bit confusing to me in some ways.
Yeah, that is a strange one. But you got to trust Brighton, man. Like they usually get their big decisions right, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes, but also this is just a bit odd, I think, in terms of the way that they've reformed the squad a little bit in this month. And the final one, Dean, was an early big name in this market, Mohamed Kadamaita, who was at Rennes, teenage striker, making a lot of noise. A lot of teams very interested in him, reportedly, looking at potentially making offers as one for the future, maybe one for the sort of raw, ready right now. He's gone to Al Hilal. And not for a particularly big fee. Now, I'm sure the wages are pretty stratospheric, right? But this felt odd to me as well because there was so much noise. There, I remember graphics being pulled up on Sky Sports here in the UK, people talking about Manchester United, people talking about some of the other big clubs. And then about 3 days later, it was like, bang, gone to Al Hilal. And I am quite intrigued by the Saudi shift to younger players and what that means for the league going forward. But also... Well, Al Hilal have also signed Benzema, so how many minutes is he going to get? Right, like this is
like
the
when that
interesting
you're like, like you've got Benzema, mate. What? Reminds me a little bit of like James Trafford going to Man City and then he signed Donnarumma. It's like, but Kadamaita is like really good, really good. Yeah. Like Man United were linked with him, and I was like, okay, like this. I've watched highlights reels, and I was like, looks good. Spoke to people, they were like, he is on the radar. Don't think we're going to do it in Jan. So unless he holds off till summer, probably not going to happen. But that's off now.
Yeah, 100%. It's a very, very interesting one. So we'll see how his career develops over there. And with that, Dean, I think it's probably time for us to pull this
Great
podcast
job, mate.
to a
Great
close.
job. Bravo. The deadline to your deadline show, mate. Well done. You've reached it. You stayed within the hour parameter. Incredible, to be honest, by your standards. I'm very impressed. Enjoyed it, mate. There was some really good names in there. We got through about 40 players, I reckon, in the course of that hour.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of players, and I'm excited to see how they all get on and see how many of these shouts turn out to be good ones, right? There are no guarantees when it comes to transfers, but I'm pretty confident with some of those deals that they're going to work out in a pretty stratospheric way. So let's see how they get on. And that means that all that's left for me to do is say a massive thank you to Mr. Dean Jones.
Cheers, mate.
I've been Jack Collins. This has been Ranks FC. Thank you so much for listening as ever. We would love to see you over on the Patreon, as Dean said. The link's in the description. Get like 4 extra episodes a week. Loads of stuff from Dean and I reacting to all the games, previewing the weekend, talking points for any club you desire. If you put those in the comments, it means we can get to them in depth. So we'd love to see you over there. But for now, from us, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you all very, very shortly, Rank Squad. Take it easy. Peace.